I tell you what, we're up here on Lake of the Woods. It's beginning of November, so it's pretty late in the year. Great time to be up at Lake of the Woods though, because these fish are migrating through the Rainy River. I'm fishing with a couple of good friends of mine, Jeff Stevenson and Glenn Marshall. And I tell you what, it's fun to fish with them because those two guys are the two guys that I really started jig fishing with. About 20 years ago, Glenn and Jeff and I would go on Pool 4 of the Mississippi, and we really learned how to jig fish, how to feel jig bites. We worked on refinements and equipments and jigging actions and just really taught ourselves the art of jig fishing. So we're going to be trying to find some spots where these fish are migrating through. We're going to do everything we can to try and get you the next bite.
Keith Kavajecz, Jeff Stevenson, and Glenn Marshall have come a long way as friends as well as jig fishermen since meeting over 20 years ago as members of the Minnesota Walleye Searchers Club, which shaped the beginning of their collective mission to better understand the technique of vertical jigging as if it were a science by breaking down the jigging actions, lures, and river locations and placing real meaning to the ups and downs of jigging for river walleye.
There he is. Get him. Oh yeah. Good fish. This one here came as I kind of slid out into a little bit deeper water, 21 feet. Picked up that jig. Very nice. Here we go. Nice. Lake of the Woods in the Rainy River up here, one of the techniques that it's really known for is positioning your boat typically with an anchor right on the spot and waiting for waves of walleyes to come up through. Basically coming from Lake of the Woods and moving up the Rainy River here as the shiners come in. Well, how do you know exactly where to anchor? You anchor in the wrong spot and you might sit there for hours and not catch any of these waves of fish. So what I like to do is first of all, just talk to your resort owner or the bait shop and get some ideas of where might be some good spots. I talked to Brian Nye over at Adrian's Resort, and he gave us a few general areas we might want to look for these fish to be. But you got to figure out what depth and where on the breaks and things like that you want to position. So what I like to do is use my trolling motor and move us slowly around. Now I'm not doing like I typically would do on a river where I just vertical jig with the current. What I do is actually do a lot of holding, stopping, moving in and out of the current, up and down the break to try and figure out the right zone that the fish are in. Then, once we contact fish, once we get a fish or two, now I kind of know where one of these nice runways or paths that the walleyes are using is. So then we go upstream of it a little bit, throw out our anchor and slide back, and that'd be a good place to sit and hold. So don't just throw out your anchor and sit randomly out here. Move around a little bit, try and figure out the spot, and get yourself in a good position to catch a lot of these Lake of the Woods walleyes.
Oh, this is a nice one.
Good one?
Oh yeah, it's a good one. I'll need the net.
Okay.
Get the net for him, Jeff.
Okay. Here, you swap places with me here.
Oh, you can't hardly see him down in that water at all.
Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Come on under the boat.
There
Get
he
him,
is.
there he is.
Here he comes.
All right. Nice. That is a nice fish. Man, that glow jig.
Wow.
Look at how fat he is.
Oh, he's a good, healthy river fish.
He's been eating them shiners. Yum, yummy.
Nice
One too many
fish.
shiners. One too many shiners.
Nice.
All right.
Grow a little bit bigger. I'll catch your mom.
Doesn't have to be too much bigger, though.
We're fishing on the Rainy River. The Rainy River flows from the Rainy Lake down along the U.S.-Canadian border into Lake of the Woods. The shiners actually move out of Lake of the Woods and back up into the Rainy River in the fall, kind of migrating back towards the Rainy Lake. And what's interesting is that these walleyes will follow into these little areas, these migrating lanes, following these shiners in, and you'll catch maybe 1, 2, or 3. And then you might have to wait a little bit, and then another wave will move through. You'll catch another 1, 2, or 3. So it's a little bit of a waiting game, but well worth it to catch these quality Rainy River walleyes.
One of the most fun and challenging aspects of this late fall Rainy River walleye bite is determining how these migrating walleyes are biting. In fact, there are more than a few terms that Keith, Jeff, and Glenn use to describe the initial feel of the bites that are being communicated from the other end of their lines.
That was a tick bite.
Sure cracked it.
There, a tingle, yeah.
A glom bite, huh?
A glom bite.
Glommed on.
I mean, it was a solid clobbered.
Do we need a net?
It was just a lift bite. You know, you lift.
It's almost like playing telephone with the walleyes. And while some of their descriptions are more technically correct than others,
He just,
Was on there.
there are a few types that, if applied to your jig setup, can be utilized to increase your chances of catching better fish.
Today I want to talk about two types of bites that you get when you're jigging. One's called the tick bite, and it's basically the kind of bite that you get when the fish kind of sucks in with its mouth. We call that the aggressive bite. There's also a bite that's a presence bite. It's basically when you're lifting the jig off the bottom, you feel the presence of the fish through the tension in the line, and you always want to set as fast as you can when you hit that bite too. That's called the passive bite. If it's an aggressive bite, you tend to like to use artificials. So Gulp or twister tails are examples of using those types of lures. If it's a passive bite, you might want to use a stand-up jig so that the hook is in a vertical position. So you'd use knuckleball or a XPS type jig. So set on any bite, but keep track of the type of bite that you get, and that'll give you a clue on how to get more bites.
What is all that grunting about?
Well, it was over my head when I set the hook. I mean, I was like falling over backwards to try to get a good hook set. This was a tick bite.
do we need a net?
I don't know, yeah, maybe.
How big is this?
I thought it was not going to be that big, but it's a decent.
Oh, man! Not that big!
I didn't realize how big it was.
He's like this in tournaments too. Right on.
Oh, I don't need the net. I don't need the net. What are you talking about?
Oh, wow. This is nothing for him.
I don't think it's that. Maybe a
Look at the size of that mouth.
Now we know why he was grunting.
Yeah.
Wow. Here,
Holy man.
Wow.
Look at this.
there you go. Good job.
Thanks.
That is quality there.
That is a nice fish, isn't it?
Look at how he's just real thick here and then whoop down to his little tail. But
A
he's just
football.
thick all the way through here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is
Very
great.
nice. And a tick bite and everything.
It was.
All I heard you do is,
Oh, well, did you see I had the rod way up in the air, and so I went back and it went over my head before I got the slack out.
that one's got a little heavier weight going out there, doesn't it?
Oh, that's good.
That was good.
Cool. Too cool.
The real deal. Straight talk to make you a better fisherman. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops.
While we're waiting for that next wave of walleyes to come through here, we talk a little bit about how we're jigging and what we're using for equipment. First of all, you know, these fish, I think, are coming up in packs. And what they do is they're following these shiners. And if you've ever watched a shiner in a river in current, what they'll do is they kind of swim forward, they stop, they pause, they might slide back a little, they swim forward, they stop, so they're kind of not moving continuously, but kind of moving back and forth. Guess what that looks like? Kind of like a jig moving back and forth. So what we're doing is actually anchoring, or sometimes we're moving around a little bit with the trolling motor, but I'm letting my line actually go backwards behind the boat, and then just slowly jigging it forward and then letting it drop back. Jig forward, drop back, just like those minnows. Swim forward, drop back. And what you're doing is trying to feel for anything. I mean, you feel a weight, a mushiness, a tick, anything outside your ordinary jigging feel, you should set the hook, because that's probably a fish picking it up. Now, because they're picking it up a lot of times so lightly, what you want to do is use some equipment that's got a lot of sensitivity in it. First thing to look at is your rod. Jigging is really a great place to look at buying a little bit more expensive rod, because a lot of times the more expensive ones are also going to be the higher modulus graphite. A lot more sensitive, but also real lightweight so that you can jig them all day comfortably. Another thing you can do to look at getting increased sensitivity is your line. I'm actually using 6-pound test fire line. I'm using the crystal color here. It's slightly opaque, so this 6-pound test line is also no stretch. Fire line is no stretch, so I'm going to feel exactly what's happening down here at the jig. As far as jigs, the two best we've had are either a semi-stand-up or a stand-up jig. Semi-stand-up like the XPS jig, a stand-up jig like the knuckleball or the Zonar. I think our best colors have been more or less chartreuse and orange combination, or probably a gold has been another real good color for us. When you're up here fishing on the Rainy River, just remember, try and get that jig to look like those minnows swimming back and forth. Use equipment with a lot of sensitivity in it, and you're going to catch a lot of fish.
Having located some good spots to capitalize on the migratory lanes of these late fall Rainy River walleyes, Keith Kavajecz, Glenn Marshall, and Jeff Stevenson are now able to throw the anchor down and focus all of their attention on breaking down what entices the interest of the bigger walleyes out of the schools that are chasing shiner minnows as they move through from Lake of the Woods on their way to Rainy Lake.
Oh, yeah,
There he is. Nice.
nice.
That is a good fish. Boy, he pitched a little bit shallow for that one, huh?
Yeah,
Boy, that's
I threw it
great.
up there on that shallow break.
I don't think it's that shallow in there, though. It's kind of just a slow taper. Maybe we got to slide in a little bit or something.
Get up into maybe about 16 feet. Try that.
Look at that thing. Look at how pretty this fish
Boy,
is.
there's nothing wrong with these kind of
No,
fish.
that's a nice fish there. Look at how happy he is to be in here, too.
Nice fish, Glenn.
What is this in his mouth?
A tag?
Oh, that's your shiner in his mouth. All I saw was these two little eyeballs hanging there. Oh, well. All right, let's get him back in the water. And this is fun up here. We couldn't ask for better weather.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Hot Topics. Leading edge techniques and tackle designed to put more fish in your boat. Brought to you by thenextbite.com.
One of the hottest things in walleye fishing has been the 3-inch Berkeley Gulp minnow. We've used it in many scenarios in the last couple of years and also learned a lot of things about how to use it. What I'd like to do is show you a method of hooking up the minnow in scenarios where maybe you're fishing in a lot of weeds or cabbage or in a lot of snags. We've all been there. You're jigging with your jigs, you end up getting a bite or you end up getting a snag or get caught in weeds. And as you have the little Gulp minnow strung onto your jig, it slides down, especially if you've caught 2 or 3 fish on it and it likes to slide very easily. It gets annoying, and you always have to slide it back up, and you're always wondering if it's sliding down while you're fishing. So it just causes a lot of problems. I've got a solution to that problem. First of all, a jig that really works good when you have a situation like that is this FinTech knuckleball jig. You can see the bending in the hook. That will help, first of all, to keep the Gulp on place. The second thing that I want to do, though, is to kind of show you a little tip. What you want to do, you measure the gap on the jig to where this little point comes up, and it looks to be about almost to the gill of that minnow. Okay, then you take the minnow itself, and you take a little scissors, and you cut right in that spot about, I'd say halfway through the Gulp, so you make a slit right in the minnow. Then thread the minnow on in its normal fashion. You just thread it right on so the hook comes right out the back. You can see there's the slit. The hook will come right out the back. You slide the head of the minnow up, and guess what? The point of the jig, where it sticks up, will stick right into the slit that you made in the minnow. Now it's virtually impossible for a snag or a weed or another fish to pull that Gulp off your jig. So this is a heck of a little tip. It's going to save you a lot of frustration. It's something that's really easy to do.
With some pretty incredible jig fishing behind them, Keith Kavajecz, Jeff Stevenson, and Glenn Marshall find themselves in the early stages of a drastic weather change on this last day of their reunion trip to Rainy River to jig for late fall walleyes.
Yeah, we've definitely had a old change of weather here. I liked it a lot better warmth-wise when that south wind was blowing, but this front is moving in. Fish are getting active, I think, though.
The brisk north wind may have dialed the temperature down, but the fishing continues to stay hot.
Don't even give me time to eat a candy bar.
What is most interesting about their current situation is that even 20 years after the gang first started studying jigging together, exploring how to adapt the technique still proves key in keeping this bite alive.
I'm not a big proponent of waiting on a jig bite, but we were actually setting the hook right away on a lot of these light bites thinking they were just small fish. And it turns out they're actually really decent fish. And what's happening is these fish are coming up behind the jig and they're just biting on the tail of these minnows. They're so aggressive though that you can actually just take and pause for a second, let that fish bite up the jig a little bit more and get them. Now I'm not going to say do that all the time because I typically don't. And if I feel a good hard tick bite or a harder bite, I set the hook right away. But it seems like up here, you play with these fish a little bit and more of them are coming in the boat. Oh, there's a nice fish. I tell you what,
That is a good fish.
big old fish like that, grab that knuckleball. Just as soft as you could ever believe. And they're hitting it, it's like the jig just about gets to the bottom, and just before the bottom, it's like it falls a half inch short and you just feel something. And I just held it for a second, waited for him, and when he bobbed his head one time, I set the hook, and look at how nice that fish is. The conditions are changing, but one thing's remaining the same. The fishing is just spectacular up here.
Wow, what a nice one.
Gotta love this stuff up here. Just unbelievably fun. The really little ones play different. Right.
How do they play?
Okay, what did we say? We started with the shiners? Okay, I just forgot what I said. So what did I say?
I'll set the hook and the little bugger won't be there.
Oh no.
There's a lot of these little guys. I tell you what, there's nothing better than coming up for the last trip of the year. You birdie.
Where is it?
He's looking at you. You can see him staring back.
Here we go.
They're all biting. Everything's biting.
The Next Bite would like to thank Brian Nye and Adrian's Resort with year-round hunting and fishing opportunities on Lake of the Woods and the Rainy River. Adrian's Resort welcomes all fishermen, hunters, snowmobilers, and vacationers. For more information on Adrian's, check them out on the web or call the number below.